is CNN Breaking News.
7 o'clock Eastern, 4 in the afternoon out west. I'm Anna Cabrera in New York. You are live in the CNN newsroom. Great to have you with us. Let's get right to our breaking news. The Secret Service is pushing back tonight against a claim made by President Trump's personal attorney while defending the meeting between top Trump campaign officials and Russian nationals. Here's exactly what the president's attorney said earlier today.
Well, I've wondered why the Secret Service, if this was nefarious, why did the Secret Service allow these people in? The president had Secret Service protection at that point. That raised a question with me.
In response, the Secret Service tells CNN, quote, Donald Trump Jr. was not a protectee of the U.S. Secret Service in June 2016. Thus, we would not have screened anyone he was meeting with at that time. However, the Secret Service also says any person entering Trump Tower at the time of this meeting would have been checked for weapons. Joining us now, Ambassador Thomas Pickering. He has a lengthy resume, which includes serving as an ambassador to 6 countries, including Russia, as well as the UN. He has also served under 6 U.S. presidents, both Democratic and Republican. And also back with us, CNN political analyst April Ryan. She covers the White House every single day as the White House correspondent for American Urban Radio Networks. April, I'll start with you. Why is the White House having such a difficult time coming up with a consistent defense to this meeting?
It's what they don't know. It's what they don't know. This, from day one, from this administration, it has been high drama, and now the drama has turned to something very serious. They're having a hard time figuring this out. And when it comes to the Secret Service, you have to remember, okay, Donald Trump Jr. was not a protectee, but if he was a protectee, what the Secret Service does is take a list of who is waved in. And if they would wave him in, wave these people that Donald Trump Jr. would have come in, what they would do is do organic and metal detection. And you can have a phone going into a meeting with, or going into a building with a president. The question is, when you get into that room, can you use it? So, I mean, to say, if, you know, what's in a bag, could you take a recorder, what have you? If it's a phone, it's a different thing. But again, Secret Service doesn't even deal with that. They deal with Go ahead.
Sorry, April, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but let me bring in the ambassador to this conversation. You served under 6 U.S. presidents. Can you think of a time a president or his team have held the Secret Service responsible for a matter like this?
No, I cannot, Anna, in all honesty. I thought what April had to say was consistent with what I know about, although I think the details of that are also important. But there seem to be, look, like firemen with a fire hose, shifting the hose to where they see the fire and the flame greatest. And consistency has never been their strong point. And clearly they are continually caught out in inconsistencies in foreign policy and in statements. And seemingly each new inconsistency just makes the whole process worse. So in effect, the disarray is literally here coming home to roost. Whether it will change anybody's idea about the president or not is a much more open question.
April, when the president had to fire Michael Flynn, he blamed former President Obama for giving Flynn a security clearance in the first place. Does this administration have a problem with accountability?
Well, we hear from a lot of congressional leaders and critics. They're saying yes. And their credibility is knocked because they keep going and throwing it somewhere else, using a scapegoat somewhere else. But they're their own albatross around their own neck. I mean, just going back to this story, the Secret Service has been brought in how many times in the last 6 months on stories, be it wiretapping, be it Comey. They've been brought in so many times now. And they're supposed to be a serious organization that's used to protect the president and those who are the protectees in the president's realm and his family and top staffers. The credibility has been knocked. We just don't know how far it goes. But, you know, when you continue to deflect and talk about the former president and his administration, when do you take the onus upon yourself? That's the question. When is it about you?
Ambassador, there is a new poll out today, an ABC News Washington Post poll that finds 80% of Democrats believe Russia tried to interfere in this election, but just 33% of Republicans think this. Does the fact that Russia's intervention in our election, that it's become a partisan issue, concern you?
I'm sorry, was that question addressed to me, Anna? I didn't hear it.
It is. To you,
okay, well,
are you concerned about it?
It certainly has become a partisan issue. I think if, in fact, the data in those polls is correct, and I have no reason to doubt it. And I said a moment ago that I saw very little effect of what's going on, particularly on that Republican voting group that seems to have stayed with the president through thick and thin and all these other questions. And this is a very important group, because were that group to begin to change, it would certainly then have an effect on Republican legislators, particularly in the House and Senate and the federal branch, and they have it within their grasp, to put it this way, to take the political step, which would then be consistent, hopefully, or at least it would be consistent in whatever sense this is going to evolve, with any legal steps that might lead, obviously, to actions that would be summed up in impeachment. Whether, in fact, that will ever happen and whether that will be the case will in large measure depend upon whether there is this conjunction. Is there real evidence? Is there a crime? Is there something that meets the standard of impeachment? And is there a political reason to pursue it? Can't be pursued with merely a minority in the House and Senate.
Ambassador, given your experience abroad, do you think the president's response could be inviting foreign countries to meddle in future elections?
Well, we saw that a long time ago, and I always wondered basically whether that passed the sniff test, whether it passed the first page of the Washington Post or New York Times test, whatever test it was. But seemingly it didn't bother anybody. At least enough people were not bothered by that to in any way at all deter them from voting for President Trump. And so in a way, yeah, it bothered me, but did it bother enough other people? Well, I don't think so, but there are a lot of things out there that in this administration might have bothered people in former administrations that I have seen up close and firsthand that don't seem to be in any way at all, put it this way, laying a glove on the president at this stage.
Ambassador Thomas Pickering and April Ryan, thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
Again, our breaking news here at CNN, the Secret Service contradicting claims made by the president's attorney today. And the Secret Service tells CNN it did not vet anyone in the meeting with Donald Trump Jr., Jared Kushner, and Paul Manafort last summer. Yet another question being raised about this meeting after a week of shifting statements. Joining us, CNN law enforcement analyst Jonathan Wackrow. Jonathan spent 14 years in the Secret Service, and he's here in New York with us. So, Jonathan, essentially the Secret Service is saying that it was protecting President Trump at that time. He was then candidate Trump, of course.
Correct.
But Don Jr. wasn't a part of their protection at the time. But this meeting was held in Trump Tower, so my understanding is there were some, at least, physical protections that the people entering would have had to go through.
Absolutely. So once Donald Trump, the candidate, received Secret Service protection, one of the primary responsibilities of the Secret Service was to protect his residence, which is Trump Tower. That was also, the residence is co-joined by the campaign headquarters. So anybody going into the campaign headquarters, into Trump Tower, regardless of the reason, were screened for physical threats only. So they're screened for, any type of weapons that they have, any type of explosives. Standard operating procedure for the Secret Service to deploy, the mitigation of physical threats. In terms of what was said earlier today, does the Secret Service screen a nominee for, or a Secret Service protectee for intelligence threats? That's not the Secret Service's role at that time. They don't do that, nor did they do it for Hillary Clinton or her campaign at the time. So again, it's a little confused as to why the president's attorney decided to bring that up today.
So you had said also previously in their statement, they talk about looking for weapons. They have this magnetometer out that they would use to screen people going in. When it comes to other devices, that might have been picked up on that magnetometer. Magnetometer.
Sure.
Thank you for saying it for me. Would they have confiscated anything else like a recording device?
Well, listen, you got to look at this is what is the construct of that meeting? It was a campaign meeting. They were doing hundreds of them concurrently at that time. Anything that came into Trump Tower, they went through a bag screening. Anything that was in your bag. Now, what is a recording device? A cell phone is a recording device. So, do you confiscate cell phones? No, it wasn't the Secret Service responsibility to take any type of recording devices because it didn't pose a physical threat at the time. Again, back in June, Trump Tower, solely concerned around physical threats, preventing any harm to the president at the time, who was the protectee, or the first lady at the time. Again, nothing to do with counterintelligence.
So what strikes me though here is the Secret Service has responded in a statement like this very quickly. Is that typical? They don't usually seem like a real media-friendly outlet.
Well, I think it was the delivery method this morning that the president's attorney chose. I mean, he went on to the Sunday morning talk shows and began a narrative that potentially the Secret Service was at fault as to letting this meeting occur with a potential intelligence gathering or someone from who was trying to elicit information from Donald Trump Jr. That's wrong. That's like saying the Coast Guard was at fault. It's not. You're conflating two different constructs here. One is physical security. One is the intelligence community. Don't co-join them in this around this meeting right now.
These are people who are willing to lay their life on the line for the president.
Absolutely.
You think this statement that Jay Sekulow put out on the Sunday morning shows rubbed them the wrong way?
Absolutely. It's wrong, and you don't want you don't want to conflate what the role is of the Secret Service. Secret Service has a long-standing, and very successful protective methodology around screening for threats, physical threats, whether it's for a nominee, a foreign head of state, the president. Please don't bring in politics into this. Don't try to create this different narrative. In this instance, the attorney was wrong. The Secret Service immediately jumped on that because they wanted to set the record straight.
Would the Secret Service have known if these individuals, I'll use the word Jay Sekulow used, were there with a nefarious purpose? So
if they were name checked for criminal history or active wants or warrants, which is something that the Secret Service would do, but that would be a different conversation than what he is implying here in that conversation.
All right, Jay, thanks so much, Jonathan.
Thank you very much.
We really appreciate you coming on and explaining all that to us. The U.S.